Hello, my love, it's Zoe, and welcome to a special series here on the Oasis State podcast. Over the next handful of episodes, I'm breaking down big life transitions, or BLTs for short. We're going to dive into what they are, why they happen, and how to navigate them with clarity and confidence. Whether you're moving through a breakup, a career shift, grief, a spiritual awakening, or a major relocation, these transitions all ask the same thing of us: to let go of who we were and step into who we're becoming. This is the work I guide women through at Oasis State, and I'm so excited to share this framework with you. Let's dive in. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to episode 2 of the BLT series. So in this series, I'm breaking down big life transitions. So that's those seasons of gnarly change where you might be going through grief or heartbreak, career changes, or maybe it's inner chaos like spiritual awakenings. You could move locations, basically anything that threatens your identity, challenges your nervous system or dysregulates your nervous system, and just turns your world up on its head. Is that the right way to say it? Turns your life upside down. And in this episode, I'm going to get into relationships. Oh my God. I have had my fair share of big life transitions in the relationship department, and haven't we all? And it's not just romantic relationships, but I have a feeling that a good chunk of this episode will be focused on romantic relationships because we tend to be more intimate and vulnerable in those relationships. So when we experience an ending or a shift in dynamic in that area, it tends to affect us more than maybe, a relationship breakdown with an employer or something like that. Firstly, I suppose, sorry if you heard that noise, that message noise. It's on my laptop. I'm not really sure how to silence it. So hopefully it doesn't come up again. But anyway, let's keep going. So relationships, BLTs in the sense of relationships are, like I said, any ending of a relationship, any shift in dynamic. And I honestly believe that like breakups and heartbreak are different things as well. So we have heaps of different relationships. I'm not the first person in the world to recognize that. But we obviously have family dynamics, and then we've got community as well, which also sort of comes under the umbrella of moving locations. We have to leave a community and grieve the ending of a chapter and identity that we had in that community, and then move into a new one. We've also got friendships, and honestly, some of the friendship breakups I've had have been way gnarlier than romantic breakdowns because, they're your sisters, or sometimes you have relationships with people of another gender as well. So, friendship breakdowns or a change in that dynamic as well. Maybe you've had a best friend for like 20 years or something, and then they get a husband and have kids, and that's their journey. But the big life transition can be a change for you. And it's not about inserting yourself in their life and being like, well, your changes have affected me. Do you know what I mean? Like the energy of it is, okay, life be lifing, and everything's temporary, and my best friend or my twin sister or whoever it is moving into a different season of life, and that has impacted me because we're so close. But like I said, we're not inserting ourselves into their life and expecting them to pick up the pieces of how the changes affected you. Does that make sense? But that could be a change in a relationship dynamic as well that could cause you some inner and outer chaos. And we also have professional relationships as well, which I suppose is under that umbrella of career changes, which I'm going to go into in another episode as well. But we have work colleagues. We have some of my best friends have been people that I've met at work, and also in living situations like share house situations as well. Maybe we've had a change of dynamic with employee to employer. Maybe you've had a professional mentor. Maybe you've had a great teacher. There's a broad spectrum of relationships. And the first piece of the puzzle that I want to offer to you with how to successfully navigate big life transitions in the relationship area is this self-compassion piece of remembering that we are human beings and we're literally wired for connection. So of course, when a connection ends or there's dynamic shifts, it's going to cause us some potential sense of isolation, some overwhelm, some confusion. And that's okay. Again, it's not about projecting onto that person that has quotation marks caused the disrupt or the BLT. It's about realizing that we have these tools available to us to shift into a place of trusting that, yes, we're wired for connection, but just because one connection has ended doesn't mean that it's not going to be replaced by maybe more aligned connections or just different connections. Maybe you have a season of life where you have all of these very fun, adventurous people come into your life to invite you to get out of your comfort zone. But then, those relationships disappear because everything's temporary. Maybe you meet someone while you're traveling and then they go their separate way. But then you might also notice that you come into a season of, I've met like really, really conscious, nurturing people. And that's that season of time that's inviting you to soften and learn grace and all of those things. So everyone comes into your life to teach you something. And what's that saying? It's like you're either a lesson or a blessing. But why can't everyone be both? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm noticing that I'm saying that a lot. Sorry. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to be mindful of not saying that. Like I mentioned in the previous episode, I just love doing this long form content because I love being an entrepreneur because I'm learning how to communicate more effectively, more consciously, and I'm really in this space of creative storytelling. So I just love that I'm picking up these little things and not micromanaging my language, but I can definitely tie it up, Do you know what I mean? I'm kidding. So yeah, we can have, I know I've had a lot of relationship breakdowns and a lot of pain in that category, but I genuinely believe that everyone, even the people that have hurt me, they are a lesson, but they're also a blessing as well. Because when you have this lens of win-win and realizing that everything you experience in life is just an opportunity to bring love back to yourself, learn more about yourself, find a sense of empowerment, whatever that specific value is, it's always a win-win. So you can have these really messy, heartbreaking endings to relationships. But every time that's happened to me, I've just taken what I can from that and brought that love back to myself and found some more wisdom or found a deeper sense of wholeness that I was unintentionally outsourcing these needs to people in our life. So yeah, that's the first piece of the puzzle that I want you to realize with how to navigate relationship breakdowns is that yes, we are wired for connection, but also we need to be, if you're finding like a lot of sense of like lacking a sense of safety in relationships, a sense of satisfaction, feeling really clingy and a deep sense of control in relationships. So if you reflect on, I only feel safe and happy in a relationship when XYZ, these particular circumstances are happening, that's a sign that you need to be bringing a bit of that security back to yourself, because people can't, like, they're not your puppets. You can't get them to act in a certain way all the time to make you feel safe. True self-mastery and holistic mastery, which I mentioned in my previous video, which is the work that I teach to help people navigate these changes and turn that outer chaos into this inner stability, is by realizing, where am I not feeling this sense of wholeness within myself, and I'm outsourcing it to relationships. So yes, we are wired for connection, but it's also about, what can I provide for myself? Where am I outsourcing my power to people? But then there's also this balance of, I've personally had to navigate not being too hyper independent, So life, it's all just a balancing act. Everything in life is a balancing act, So we aren't going to be like these needy women that aren't feeling a sense of worthiness and are putting up with relationship dynamics that are perpetuating that sense of like that lack of safety we're feeling in our lives, and that lack of purpose and that lack of self-love. But then we're also not going to go fully into this hyper independence and like, I don't need anybody. Like I said, we are wired for connection. So it's about finding that balance of healthy connection. And we can only access that healthy connection and or call it in our environment once we've got that connection with ourselves. So yeah, let me break down a few things that I've had to navigate to, I feel like I want to do multiple episodes on relationships, and I might, because it's my podcast and I can do whatever I want. But I just feel like in my life I've navigated, relationship breakdowns where you think you're going to marry them and have kids with them. But then I've also navigated like situationships where it was never really anything official. So you've got to grieve potential and realize that chemistry and commitment are not the same thing. And it's like you feel this deep chemistry with someone, which is so beautiful to explore and celebrate. But if you're not ever being fully chosen in that relationship, whether it's being committed to or just given the respect that you need, if you've asked for consistency and they can't provide that to you, you'll always feel this fear, and you'll always be outsourcing your power for the sake of chemistry, and it just will never ever cut the mustard. You'll never feel safe, and you'll never feel like you can be your true empowered worthy self. So that's really hard as well. So there's a lot, again, like I've mentioned in the last 10 minutes or so of this video, is that there's a lot of relationships. So if you're listening to this episode and I touched on something and you want me to go deeper into it, fully reach out to me as well, and I can go deeper into things. But yeah, I can't cover everything in one episode. But yeah, if you're feeling like you're constantly playing out the same scary, toxic, unhealthy relationship dynamic, and you want to change that, you want to break that cycle, this episode, the things that I offer in this episode and what I've already offered in this episode are the pieces of the puzzle that you've been looking for. And once you have that inner safety, that's when the relationship upgrades come along, because like attracts like. So if you're not feeling worthy and feeling scared and feeling clingy, you're only going to attract relationships that perpetuate those disempowering experiences that you're having in your inner world. Okay, so my dad passed away in 2022. And I mention it because I just obviously it was grief, so that's a lot to go through. But I just had this moment of oh fuck. I just knew it was going to be this pinnacle, this pinpoint in my journey where I was going to go through a really deep initiation as well. And I've struggled with the language around this stuff as well, because people just use it out of context. But that's the best way I can describe it. I just knew I'm never going to be the same. And obviously I'm never going to be the same because I lost my dad, but I just knew that it was loaded. It was like this death and this loss that was really loaded. And what I unraveled over the last few years was understanding abandonment wounds and understanding codependency issues and understanding attachment styles, because all of these things are developed when we're a child, and we're not actually taught them until you're an adult and it'll come along. So in my experience, the reason I'm mentioning my dad and grief in this relationships episode was because I wasn't called to or did not have an awareness of those relationship dynamic things that I just mentioned until I lost my dad. Because obviously you've lost a parent, so it activates all of this stuff, because like I said, we create our attachment style, we get our codependency issues, we create, abandonment wounds when we're younger. So I had a pretty complicated relationship with my dad. I loved him, but he had mental health issues. He was an alcoholic. He just left us when we were kids, basically, because he couldn't handle being a dad. And it was really wild for me, because a lot of people in his life prior to me being born would say how wonderful and the life of the party he was, and he was such a wonderful person. He was a larrikin, he was so funny. So then my sister and I came along. I'm the eldest, so essentially I came along, and he completely shut down and lent on alcohol more so than he was beforehand. And it's hard, because you think my existence and my birth made someone so unhappy, it made someone else's life worse, which isn't the case. But I'm just mentioning that because that's how deep his death affected me, and it's not I wish we worked it out before he died sort of thing. Whatever was actually deeply affecting him, it wasn't just parenthood, but the responsibilities of parenthood triggered him. And he had all of these other mental health things going on. He took all of that to the grave. He had a wonderful partner in my mum and support from so many people around him. And we don't ever actually know what was ever going on. He never went and got diagnosed with anything. And yeah, so thankfully it's not one of those regret moments we could have worked it out while he was alive. There's no way he was going to ever be able to open up like that. And that comes from being a boomer as well. There's a lot of, conditioning around men being strong. quotation marks if you're not watching the video. So when I lost dad, it was like, oh fuck, like I have to go through all of this stuff. So I'll break it down. I don't need to keep going into my story, or maybe it is valuable that I'm going into my story. But if you're on this journey and you've got these relationship dynamics playing out, most of the abandonment wounds and the attachment style issues that develop when we're a kid, we play out unconsciously in our relationships, and mostly romantic relationships, until we do this work, this relational dynamic awareness work. And it's really hard because, like I said, most of our romantic relationships we are the most vulnerable in, and we're the most intimate in, and we're actually playing out the most unconscious or toxic dynamics as well. So it's really horrible. So that was a bit of a tangent, but if you're playing out the same relationship dynamics, we need to go back to looking at what dynamics did you create and beliefs around relationships and yourself and your worth did you create when you were a kid. So you could also call that inner child stuff as well. And basically all it is a journey of identifying those insecurities that can play out in our abandonment wounds, our codependency issues, and our attachment styles, and how can we bring those things that we're outsourcing through insecurities back to ourselves and finding a sense of wholeness. And also, you don't actually have to be single to be navigating this. You can be in a healthy relationship, moving from a place of insecure dynamics to secure dynamics. So, but if you're listening to this, you might be going through a breakup or single right now, and maybe not considering yourself happily single. And that's okay. I've been there. But I have just dove into this dynamic work, and now I'm genuinely happily single, and I'm not worried about, there's no love out there for me. Like, I genuinely believe in my bones, you don't create a heart like mine and I don't get to experience happy relationship dynamics, So obviously, at the time I'm recording this episode, I'm happily single. And I know the love of my life is out there, and he will find me. He'll be magnetized towards me. If I ever feel like actively dating, I will. But right now, I'm just so focused on my business and filling up my cup and going surfing and hanging out with friends and reading my fantasy books. And I might meet him organically, or I might start actively dating, and I'll only do that when I feel like it. But right now, it doesn't feel like where I should be putting my energy. So I am a testament to doing all of this work, because I just used to be so clingy and needy and confused, and I just wanted to be chosen by a man. And that's okay. I'm not beating myself up, and don't beat yourself up if you resonate with that. But moving into the space of understanding my attachment style, which for me was anxious attachment, has been life-changing. So there's multiple insecure attachment styles. There's anxious attachment style, fearful avoidant, dismissive avoidant, and I think it's like disorganized avoidant. There's a few of them. So obviously I've dove really deep into anxious attachment, because that's what I am. And I've explored the other ones because I actually go into that whole reparenting journey in my grief book. I wrote a book about my grief process, and the first half of my book is my grief process with my dad. And then the second half of the book is this reparenting journey, because I was like, okay, well, you can't sit in the sad feels forever and feel like a victim because I lost my dad, because death is as sure as life. And I was like, I just don't want to feel disempowered by this anymore. So I dove into my reparenting journey, and that involves understanding our attachment styles. But for the length of this episode, I'm not going to go in depth into all of the insecure styles. There are so many resources out there online, and including my Oasis State resources, that help you identify what your insecure attachment style is, and then how to bring that love back to yourself and heal that. And it's basically just a lot of realizing what you were outsourcing, or the negative beliefs that you were holding on to about what you deserve, and just bringing that back to yourself. And it takes time, and it's micro pivots, and it's just, it can be a lot of tears and sadness, but it's so fulfilling. And you just feel secure. It's so beautiful and amazing, but can be really, really hard as well. And then there's a whole inner child dynamic there as well, because basically the only person's approval and acceptance you actually should be looking for is your 10-year-old self, or your 5-year-old self, whoever you identify with, or your 15-year-old self. That's the only approval you should ever, ever, ever be looking for. And it's really beautiful when you get there and you realize I realized that the life that I've created for myself, oh my God, if 5-year-old me knew how bloody cool I was now, I've been cool the whole time. I just didn't recognize it, you know? So that's the inner child side of things as well, is like becoming that version of yourself and creating a life where that 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 8-year-old version of yourself feels safe and feels loved and thinks you're the coolest fucking person ever. It's the coolest journey ever. So yeah. Another thing I had to dive into to navigate the big life transition version of relationships is abandonment wounds. So what triggers your sense of abandonment? And we can't go in, it's different for everyone. Again, if you work with me, I can help you identify that. There's all of these resources out there for that. But basically, we can't put a Band-Aid on this wound that's festering and infected, etc. You've got to get in there and clean out the wound. And that's also something I dive into in my Dead Parents Club grief book. And my other resources with Oasis States. So yeah, we can't be walking around with this big festering abandonment wound. We have to dig in there, get in there, clean it out, and eventually it becomes a scar. And sometimes every now and again it will get triggered, but it's just a scar. So all you're doing is acknowledging and feeling the scar tissue rather than this big gaping wound. Sorry for the visuals, but we really have to get in there and realize what's going on. We also need to work on our codependency issues. So codependency is our need to be needed. And basically you'll realize that if you are striving to, like, that need to be needed and striving to be in people's lives and trying to, like, you get off on on needing to be needed, you are creating this horrible double standard for yourself, because you will show up in people's lives in a way that they won't show up for you because you just want to be needed, you know? And it feels fulfilling, but it's not. It's smoke and mirrors. It's horrible because you will let everyone around you get away with so much shit and still show up in their life because you have that need to be needed, but then no one will show up for you. And that's that weird hyper independence piece, because you're not letting anyone into your life, or you're entertaining or giving energy to people that are selfish in that way and they won't ever show up for you. So that's the codependency side of things as well. And this is big stuff, guys. So, but it's so necessary. It's so worth it. And it comes out in so many different dynamics. Like I said, there's friendship breakups as well. So if you're a woman and you're having a friendship breakup with another woman, then there's a lot of sister wounding that comes up and mother wounding that comes up. And it's great because once you have an awareness of all of this stuff, that's 99% of the work. And I always preach in my Oasis State library and my club, awareness creates choice. So once we have that awareness, then we can lock into, if it's the healing, the emotions, like shifting, transmuting emotions, emotional alchemy stuff, regulating our nervous system, because I don't care how much breath work you do and nervous system regulation work you do. If you aren't doing this relational dynamic work and figuring out what your triggers are and healing codependency, etc., you will always be dysregulated, you know? And that's, I'm just catching myself with some language again. I'll do it later. But yeah, it's really, that's again coming to that analogy of we have to get to the wound and clean it out. We can't just do breath work and put a Band-Aid on it and regulate ourselves, because you'll just get triggered again and it'll come back. And you'll constantly feel like, you know, that whacking inflatable wailing man thing. That's what you'll feel like until you do this relational dynamic work and bring that love back to yourself, bring that safety back to yourself, feel empowered, feel confident without any exterior evidence. But like I said, it doesn't mean you don't have relationships around you, but when you're navigating a BLT, majority of the time there are seasons of needing to be alone. And I don't want to label it as isolation. It's solitude. It's necessary solitude to fill up your cup and do this work. And the longer that you avoid it and keep entertaining these relationships that just fucking trigger your nervous system and trigger that lack of safety, you won't feel that fulfillment from relationships. Do you know what I mean? Like do you know what I mean? But yeah, so we get so scared of being in solitude, but if you're in solitude with the awareness creates choice, these things that I'm providing you in this podcast episode, and if you work with me, it's not lonely. You don't feel lonely. You realize you just need to be by yourself for a little bit to figure it all out. And then people magnetize towards you. I don't have to lift a finger now, and I get so many incredible invitations and people wanting to connect with me because they're feeling my energy and they're feeling that inner stability that I have, and I'm magnetizing them in because I have that safety to have that like safe inner masculine, that safe inner feminine, and the inner feminine is the magnetism. So I can go into that dynamic as well, but I'm just intuitively feeling like I need to wrap up this episode now. There's so much to dive into with relationships, and relationship breakdowns are textbook big life transitions, but feel the heartbreak, feel the emotional overwhelm, and then lock into the reparenting work, lock into that work on your abandonment wounds and all of the stuff that I've just described in this episode. So if this episode resonated with you and you're like, holy shit, I really want to break these relationship cycles and move out of my big life transition, because you're just going to stay in this season of chaos until you do this work. And if you want to come to this season where you're truly fulfilled within yourself, and then you magnetize beautiful relationships to you as a result, join Oasis State Club with me. It's a 6-month mentorship space where you have weekly access to me and that community support. Or if you're a self-led, self-guided queen, I have the Find Your Oasis library where I break down all of this relational work as well, because no one's coming to save you, baby girl. You have to do this stuff for yourself, and it's big work. So remember that we're wired for connection, but that's okay. We need to have compassion to find the right connections, to do that inner work, to find those right connections. So I'm sure this episode has guided you from that, recognizing that inner and outer chaos that you're going through in relationships, and realize that you have the choice to break that cycle through the things that I mentioned in this episode, and that the loving relationships that you're looking for and the self-love that you want to access is available to you, my loves. So I love you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode. Mwah. Hello again, my queen, and thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you're navigating a big life transition right now and want deeper support, you can explore my resources in the links below. I have my Find Your Oasis library for my self-paced queens, Oasis State Club for my community-loving queens, and lock-in sessions if you want some private one-on-one support. Everything is linked in the show notes. Mwah!